Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Triangles Meditation Group. Today is February 7th, 2022. And as we do each week, let's begin with a brief moment of silence, followed by sounding of the noontime recollection. Let's link together as a group of Triangles workers. We know, O Lord of life and love, about the need. Touch our hearts anew with love, that we too may love and give. We come together each week with a twofold purpose: to introduce this planetary service of triangles to people who are new to it, and to encourage them to form a triangle, and also to provide a platform for those people who are already members of triangles to come together each week and participate in a meditative visualization in the support and strengthening of the planetary network. Triangles was founded in 1937 in the endeavor to unite like-minded men and women of goodwill in a simple spiritual service to humanity of great effectiveness. Triangles work is done by units of 3 people, linking in thought and purpose each day and uniting mentally with all other triangle units in the world. Through this means, a network of mental power and radiation is created, which can be used to communicate the energy of goodwill between the people of the world. Through this communication, this distribution of spiritual energy, a pervasive climate of light and goodwill is generated, which helps to influence human attitudes of mind and heart. Triangles workers set energies in motion, which unite and relate peoples of all nationalities, all creeds and colors. The resultant subjective atmosphere of human consciousness is lifted and illumined through the daily use of the Great Invocation by all Triangles workers. So if you believe in the power of thought and would like to become a member of Triangles, please understand that it only takes a few minutes each day, and it can therefore be fit into even the busiest of schedules. And I wanted to remind everyone that we do have, Lucis Trust does have a podcast, which is called, forget what it's called, Inner Sight, sorry. It's called Inner Sight, and it's available on all the podcast platforms. And it is a listing of all of our audio programs, our full moons, our new moons, our Triangles webinars, and our Goodwill webinars. And I think even our seminars are posted up there, and our conferences. So if you can't always tune in regularly to these events, you can have everything in one place on your podcast app. And we also stream live each week these webinars to our Triangles meditation group on Facebook. And today we are also streaming live to Instagram and to YouTube. So we're becoming tech aficionados here. So if you'd like to encourage any friends to tune into us through those other platforms, please do. We would appreciate it. And after our meditation today, we are going to hear from co-worker in Lucis Trust London, Simon Marlow. Many of you are surely familiar with Simon. He helps out in the Arcane School and the Beacon, and is a musician and a teacher of music as well, among many other things. Simon is here to share some wisdom with us all on exploring the theme of exploring consciousness. So we look forward to hearing from Simon after the meditation. So now, as we do each week, let's begin with a brief visualization, coming together on the mental plane as a group, visualizing the planet as a sphere of lighted energy. And visualize within that sphere a triangle composed of the three primary planetary centers. Shambhala, the planetary head center. The spiritual hierarchy, the planetary heart. And humanity, the planetary throat center. Visualize the circulation of energies flowing in all directions around the triangle, merging and blending the 3 points, filling the triangle with light. And superimposed upon that triangle, visualize a 5-pointed star, the star of the world teacher, linking east and west, past and future, radiating the energy of love wisdom. At each point of the star, the sphere of his activity, stands an outpost of his consciousness, the 5 planetary centers. London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo. Visualize the energies radiating forth from the center of the star through the 5 points. Visualize these energies enlivening small groups gathering everywhere, aiding them to focus and direct the energies into the consciousness of all humanity, solving its problems, creating right human relations, restoring peace on earth. Project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy and sound together the invocation of light. Radiance we are and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. This morning I was listening to a podcast, and on that podcast, the host shared a letter she had received from a Canadian mother of a young teenage girl who had her daughter who had taken her life as a result of the isolation and the changes that were occurring in Canada and so many parts of the world over the last couple of years. And such events give us pause to think about the challenges this world is presenting to the young people, those who are still growing and who are more vulnerable to the challenges of these times, those who don't always have the developed skills to surmount the challenges of isolation, loneliness, separation from friends and family, and don't also have the necessary foresight to know that someday these situations will resolve themselves and are resolving themselves, we hope, and that things will not always remain as they are at the present time. In our spiritual practices, we find the constant emphasis on the search for the truth, for the real, for that which substands the glamours and illusions of our world. Truth being that which is like the pearl lying hidden within, forged out of the stress of circumstances, or rather the ability to arise above those circumstances. In our search for truth and for the real, we're encouraged to use different mantrams. The ancient mantram, which asks us to move from the unreal to the real. We're asked to repeat on a daily basis to achieve greater mental clarity and freedom from the astral plane. Let reality govern my every thought, and truth be the master of my life. Yet there's an idea that is perhaps curious at first about the effects of the invocation of this light and its direction into the dark places of the astral plane. This invocation of the light is the work of the Triangles Network, after all. And as such, we should not be too surprised with some of the impact this impouring light is having upon human consciousness. We're invoking it on a daily basis. And the Tibetan gives us two of the primary results of the impouring of this light into the world. The first is that it helps to dissipate the glamour, which is a very satisfying experience. That's why we work together to help free the prisoners of the planet, which include ourselves. But the second effect or result of this impouring of the light is perhaps somewhat surprising. It's to see the real. But the Tibetan describes the real as a terrifying experience, brother of mine. So it's interesting to note here the Tibetan's defining of this confrontation with reality as terrifying. And yet each day we are encouraged to identify ourselves with this reality. And that this process of identification with the real goes on throughout the whole stage of discipleship up till the taking of the third initiation, when there is that direct confrontation between the unreal and the real, the dweller and the angel. The new group of world servers is caught up in this precise process, aiding in dissipating the glamours and illusions of our world, while at the same time coming to see and know them more clearly for the stark contrast they present to the real, the approaching light of the hierarchy, to the Christ, the embodiment of the real. We can recall the world's reaction to that reality as embodied in the Christ 2,000 years ago. That reality was too much for the world. The world was not sufficiently prepared for the real. Today, at this higher turn of the spiral, we may see many attempts to shut down and suppress the realities of our times and the consequent distortions of truth and justice. But these attempts will fail, and the coming reality will be aided by all who dedicate their lives to ushering in the light and turning it upon the darkness. We have to do this work on behalf of those who cannot yet find the strength within themselves because they're too young, too impressionable, or too frail and too weak. We have to work to bring in the light so that they will be protected and enabled to join the vanguard of those who are willing to face the real. So we work together now, integrating ourselves as a group, focusing on the mental plane, breathing together, linking in thought as a soul, as a point of love and light with all those people throughout the world who are working with this Triangles meditation group. And project a line of lighted energy towards the highest center, Shambhala, as we invoke the spiritual will. In the center of the will of God, I stand. Naught shall deflect my will from His. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Using the creative imagination, link with two other points of light to create a triangle of light. Visualize the triangle in which you are working as an essential part of the radiant worldwide triangles network. Hold the consciousness immersed within the light of the group soul, the heart of love, which underlies and infuses the network. Now lift the consciousness to the world teacher, who stands as the heart of love at the center of the spiritual hierarchy and also at the heart of each triangle. Precipitation. Visualize the energies of love, light, and goodwill circulating in and around the triangle's network. Visualize these energies unifying and eliminating all divisions within humanity, healing and transforming human consciousness, and establishing right human relationships. Projecting a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy, we sound the mantra of unification. The sons of men are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve, and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all people love. Visualize the whole planet, a light with triangles. See new triangles being formed everywhere. Distribution. Sounding the great invocation silently or aloud. And as we repeat each stanza, let's visualize the network, acting as a link between the world of spiritual realities and humanity, as a channel through which light, love, and divine purpose may flow into human consciousness. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everyone. Simon, I'd like to welcome you now. Can you unmute your microphone? Thank you.
There
Great.
we go.
Hey, Simon.
Hi.
Welcome. Nice to have you here.
It's very nice to be with you all.
Thank you. So we look forward to your thoughts.
Okay. When Kathy asked me if I'd make a contribution this evening, I thought, well, one of the really interesting things is what is happening in humanity's understanding of consciousness at the moment. And in the book, The Light of the Soul, Alice Bailey remarks that there are 3 books which should be in the hands of every student: the Bhagavad Gita, the New Testament, and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. For, she says, in these 3 is contained a complete picture of the soul and its unfoldment. And it's actually rather interesting that she doesn't include any of the books that she was writing with the Tibetan in this list. And we know how valuable they are and it perhaps tells us how mighty valuable the Bhagavad Gita, the New Testament, and the Yoga Sutras are. So my starting point this evening is the Bhagavad Gita. This is a wonderful allegory of the eventual triumph of the indecisive disciple, who's represented by Arjuna. He's on the battlefield of the pairs of opposites of the emotional nature, and it's called in the legend Kurukshetra. These pairs of opposites are represented by the opposing armies on this battlefield of what is really a civil war. Arjuna knows that he must give the order for the battle to begin, but he also knows that in this battle, brother will kill brother, son will kill father, and so on. And he cannot bring himself to give the order. There follows a long dialogue between Arjuna, who represents the aspiring disciple, and Krishna, the embodiment of the soul. And this dialogue, still after so many millennia, rings with truth for us today. Here, Krishna instructs Arjuna in the facts of the impermanence of the form, the truth of the indwelling soul, and the various means or yogas that can be practiced which will bring a person into true knowledge of themselves as the soul itself. One of the most enlightening passages is where Krishna teaches Arjuna about the three states of matter, the three Gunas, as they're termed in Hindu philosophy. These are inertia, mobility, and rhythm, or in their Sanskrit terms, tamas, rajas, and sattva. This is perhaps a roundabout way to get to my central point, that in describing the quality of rajas, or mobility, I think Krishna is perfectly describing modern humanity with its rapid development, its constant movement, its materialism, its greed, its passion, and its intellectual brilliance. People tend to criticize this condition, but actually, I think it's a major step forward on the path to the rhythm, the sattva, a spiritual realization. Now, one of the ways in which it seems to me that this intellectual materialism is manifesting is in the consensus academic view about what consciousness is. According to this, consciousness is the result of brain activity, of the electrical and chemical interactions of the neurons and the synapses. Consciousness, they hold, is the result of brain activity. In this view, when you make a choice, it's not really you at all, but your robot brain. In the last analysis, this means that there is no such thing as moral choice. There is no creativity. There is no free will. Before you are born, there is nothing. When you die, you simply cease to exist. Now, of course, I don't believe this is a correct picture of how things really are. But I think it's really important for us in what we call the consciousness movement to recognize what is going on in the intellectual environment of the world. And I actually take comfort from the idea, well expressed in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, that prolonged concentration on any object will reveal the meaning behind it. So one of the most exciting areas of research these days is in consciousness studies, simply because it must eventually lead to a realization that consciousness is non-local to the brain, as the neuropsychiatrist Peter Fenwick described years ago at an inspiring World Goodwill meeting in London. I think that one of the areas in which the materialist view is being exposed as false is in the remarkable studies that have been taking place for at least 40 years into what we now call near-death experiences. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with this, here is a brief description. Through illness, a heart attack maybe, or perhaps something like a road accident, the person finds them suddenly, as it were, detached from the body, which they can often view. Then perhaps they pass through a tunnel towards a being of light, a being of unconditional love. Perhaps they are met by previously deceased relatives or friends. Interestingly, this is not a new experience in the life of humanity, though it is much more frequent nowadays because of the amazingly effective resuscitation techniques and machinery that we have at our disposal. In fact, in the West, I believe that the first account of a near-death experience is in the legend of which forms the last book in Plato's Republic, which was written about 2,500 years ago. Here, the warrior has been very badly wounded in battle, and in fact they think he's dead, and they put him on a funeral pyre. But before they light it, he has this near-death experience in which he can see the souls of the dead ascending upwards into heaven, and the souls of those about to be born descending. And of course, he survived to tell the tale. The stages of the near-death experience are also described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This is a text composed in the 8th century by Padmasambhava, written down by his primary student Yeshid Tsogyal, buried in the Gampo Hills in central Tibet, and subsequently discovered and promulgated by Karma Lingpa in the 14th century. And this book records not only the ingredients of what we understand as the near-death experience, but goes beyond and describes what happens to the soul as it travels towards the causal realm. But the beauty of this dilemma over what consciousness really is that each one of us can explore it for ourselves. If we think about it, consciousness is the only thing that any of us has direct experience of. Everything else has to be perceived through the senses. Descartes understood this when he wrote his famous dictum, cogito ergo sum, or I think, therefore I am. Actually, I think this statement is better understood by saying, I am conscious, therefore I am. Descartes has come in for a lot of criticism over the past decades for separating mind from matter, but I actually think he is correct. Matter is the vehicle in which mind or consciousness gains experience and becomes creatively active. The reality is that the tension between these material and spiritual views about what consciousness is actually a springboard for humanity into a future where consciousness will become to be seen as primary. I think this will release humanity into a marvelous period of creativity in line with the plan. It will heal humanity and heal the world. There you go, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Simon. So many thoughts in a brief amount of words. It's very, very powerful.
When I was reading it through, I thought, I could have spent another page on that idea.
Yeah. Next time. But that was wonderful. In your final thoughts there about consciousness being the primary vehicle, I wondered if you've had any thoughts about the prophecy that the Tibetan states that the soul itself will be discovered. He says, when the intellect of the French is turned towards the discovery and the elucidation of the things of the spirit, then they will carry revelation to the world. When their egoic ray dominates the third ray, and the separative action of the fifth ray is transmuted into the revealing function of this ray, then France will enter into a period of new glory. Her empire will then be of the mind, and her glory of the soul. And he goes on to state, if this energy of the fifth ray, which is the soul ray of the French nation, can make its potency felt in the stress and misery of the present world condition, then to France may be given the ultimate glory of proving to the world that the fact of the soul, and of giving a demonstration of soul control. The soul pattern may be translated by the genius of the French intellect into terms which humanity can understand, and a true psychology of the soul may come into being. That's pretty powerful.
It's an extraordinary idea and a prophecy. I have to say, I don't see it happening at the moment.
Yeah, but things can change.
Indeed they can. And when they change, how rapidly they change.
Yes. And I read something recently that was sort of made me think of France, because I was reading about the seventh ray, the incoming of the seventh ray, and the Tibetan gave the interesting statement that the seventh ray will work through those countries that are ruled by the fifth ray, the countries that have a strong fifth ray. And so that would certainly be France.
Yes.
But it would also be those countries that are governed powerfully by Aquarius as well, because Aquarius is a vehicle for the fifth ray. So I think this incoming of the seventh ray, which we're told is so powerful at this moment, must be really awakening the soul of France. And so, yeah, like you said, it might not be looking at the moment.
It's very interesting when you look at almost every Western country.
Yeah.
They're going through a period of political turmoil.
Yes.
Where the old divisions of left and right are resurrecting. Yeah. And you also get the extraordinary phenomenon of people being told or given information, and you just don't know if it's true or not.
Yes.
And people perhaps sort of settle for what their prejudice think must be right.
Yeah.
But it is an extraordinarily difficult time to be living in.
Yes.
And it makes you realize why one of the spiritual virtues has always been truth.
Yeah.
And, the Christ, know the truth and it will make you free.
Yeah.
What a statement.
Yes.
But then at his trial, Pontius Pilate said, what is truth? And that's the sort of the philosophic question,
yes,
which is very, very difficult to answer.
Yeah. Yes. But it could be also the case that despite all the outer happenings, all the world of outer seeming, that within each nation, within each group, there are those who, no matter what's going on the outer planes, they can still be penetrating into these realms of the soul and bringing through, that reality. So,
well, that's why this research on the NDEs is so valuable at the moment.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I read an article by Peter Fenwick that somebody has a near-death experience and their body's lying on a hospital bed in a room, and the person apparently is able to view what's happening to their body from the perspective up on the ceiling.
Yeah.
So he decided that he would do some research by having a shelf up there, on which he would put various objects, which the people lying on the hospital bed could not possibly know. Mm-hmm. But if there was a reality to it, then when they had their near-death experience up on the ceiling, they would be able to say what was there. So what's happened to that research, I don't know. But it just shows the sort of the detail and the rigor that people are approaching this.
Yes. And the Tibetan also mentions that there will be two young children coming forth about this time, one in the United States and I believe the other in India, who will be able to contact the dead through some kind of technological medium, and that this will revolutionize humanity's understanding of the barriers between the real and the unreal. So, yeah,
That's
I think
right.
that will be a big breakthrough, certainly, in consciousness.
Yes, yes.
It's said that we're entering into a time within planetary history of illumination, the pouring in of light into human consciousness. Can you share any reflection on the ways in which you've seen this inpouring of light over the course of your life? And if you have any projections as to how, any further projections than what you've already
Well,
shared as to
that's
how
an
this.
that's an enormous
I
question.
know, I know. We have
But
time.
what?
We have time.
Oh, do you want me to come back next week?
Yeah. Yeah, I
The
don't.
I mean, my first thought immediately was the understanding, which is what light or illumination is, of how desperately important it is that we behave correctly towards the natural world.
Mhm.
And that's, I mean, to me, the although there are still climate change deniers or people who deny that the human activity is responsible for even a part of it, but actually, in my book, the uh, the understanding that the whole sort of world of global ecology means that we have to change our habits, and most people understand that very well now. And it just means also that the only way we can deal with it is through international cooperation. So, however much the Russians might not like the Ukrainians, or the Chinese don't like the Taiwanese, or
Yeah,
whatever these petty personality attitudes, you have to rise above them.
yes,
Because if we don't, there's not going to be a world that's going to be habitable.
yeah,
And the issue is as stark as that, in my opinion. And we're already seeing huge levels of refugees coming from countries where water has ceased to exist,
yes,
and they of course want to come to countries where the land is fertile and the economy is working. And of course, the people in those countries won't let them in or don't want to let them in. So there's a issue of having to rise above the personality and learning to function as
yeah,
the soul out of real compassion.
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
one thing. I think probably another one that I've experienced is how much more people recognize the value of observing human rights.
yeah,
And that, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, people were just, as individuals, didn't really matter. But now the value of the individual is so strong that when any individual, is abused or treated badly, I mean, there are groups all around the world who will rise up and say, look, this is simply not right. So there's an enormous pressure politically for the
yeah,
United Nations Charter of Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that this should be observed much, much more widely.
yeah,
So
yes,
that's the second one. And I think the third one, I would say, is the remarkable change in my lifetime that's happened to the organized religions in the world, which when I was young, the religion you belonged to was thought to be the right one and everybody else was wrong.
Yeah.
And it really was that. And now thanks to the theosophical movement, largely in the 19th century, the understanding of the depth of wisdom that the world's great religions, they are treasures which are now shared everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And the value of meditation. I mean, even if you're a materialist atheist, you practice meditation.
Yes.
And that is a start. And if you do it properly, maybe you'll develop understandings. And also you will see through the glamours of the spiritual path that maybe we are still encumbered by.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I just wanted to share that in terms of the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutras, we have the Light of the Soul by Alice Bailey on the Yoga Sutras, but there's two also really wonderful translations. One of both of those teachings by Charles Johnston.
Yes.
And so we can encourage people to, if they're looking for a certain translation, they might consider that one. It's really helpful.
One of the interesting things about the Alice Bailey book is that she quotes from the other translations.
Yes.
The actual sutras themselves are very difficult to put into language where the meaning is accurate to our modern minds. And it's very useful to look at different perspectives or different ways to express it.
Yeah. And I know in certain cases the Tibetan will say his translation of one of the sutras in combination with Charles Johnston's translation provides the complete picture, but it couldn't be said in one phrase. It had to be two different phrases.
Yes.
Would you like to read a few of the comments? And if anyone, Joshua has his hand raised, so let me just unmute. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, Kathy and Simon. As you know, we have a live stream on YouTube today, and there was a nice comment, which I think is a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. Daryl Ivanka says, quote, "I am time, Arjuna, and if you do not kill them, I will," end quote.
Yes, I remember that bit.
It's great. It's great that we have
the waster of people.
Oh.
And the interesting thing about the Bhagavad Gita is that when Oppenheimer at the Los Alamos, when they exploded the first nuclear device, and he quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, I think two things. He saw this fireball, and the quote that came to his mind was brighter than 1,000 suns, which is what Arjuna says when he sees Krishna in his reality. And the other one is, and now I'm become death.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
Yeah, powerful quotes. So if you'd like to read a few of and if you have any comments to share on some of the comments,
I'll have to bring the chat up.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some lovely ones. Kaya Hislop says, climate and the condition of our natural environment are directly related to human consciousness. Absolutely right. Yes. Consciousness in its deepest essence is divine presence and is the subjective experience of light. That's what we haven't really talked about, is it? That consciousness is perhaps best described as light. One of the interesting things in the English language is that when you have a problem and it's explained, and then when you understand, you say, oh, I see. And
Yeah.
of course, you're not seeing with your physical eyes,
Yeah.
but you're using that word because now you understand, and understanding is light.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot of references to the near-death experience. And somebody, Elliot Haichu, is reminders of the Tibetan, speaking of the annihilation of time.
Yeah.
And in a very prosaic way, of course, that has happened with the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started first working with the Trust 40 years ago, communication between London and New York was by letter.
Yeah.
And then they had the first sort of computers, and there was what's it called, an email thing called Green. Green, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a awkward thing to use because at one point you had to press the letter D on your keyboard to download the letter that was coming over from wherever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you pressed D at the wrong time, it deleted it.
Oh.
Yes. So, yes, and when I can remember at the Lucis Trust, we had our first computer, and it was a computer with I don't know how many kilobytes in its memory. It was very little, but it cost £3,500, and it was so valuable it was actually bolted to the desk.
Oh.
It's extraordinary. In that short time,
Yeah.
you have effectively annihilated time and space in terms of consciousness.
Yes. Let me unmute Kit. Hello, Kit.
Oh, well, hello. I had just put a question in regarding, I don't, why why people feel it's so important to contact the dead, because I assume that when we die, our soul is busy helping us do a lot of other work, including other incarnations or evolving in consciousness or things like that. So I wouldn't think it's this idea at all of being fixed in time. But I'd be interested to hear in Simon's or anyone else's. But I know there is a lot about that, and I'd forgotten that I had my hand up. So don't worry if you want to focus on something else.
No, I think that's an interesting question, and it raises the issue of detachment. And I think many people I know are not that particularly concerned about whether they survive death. I think myself that one has to be detached about these things. But on the other hand, if on a global scale, you were able to establish a sort of continuity of consciousness, which is what this is about, then it means that the integration of what we call the astral plane and the physical plane will proceed, which I think is part of the aim of the plan.
Yeah, I think it's an important, it will be an important step in human evolution because it would mean that the barriers that presently exist, the lack of understanding that exists, it will be, completely blown away by the fact that there is no death in reality. There's just a transition into another form of consciousness, because
Yeah.
so much of the world is held in fear of death, and I think this would be, the Tibetan says it will be an incredible liberating factor that
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think he means, Kit, that we'll sit around constantly communicating with those who have passed over, because, like you say, they have other things to do. But the fact that it could break that fear and break that, he says in the future the deathbed will be happier than the birthing process. People will understand that it's just releasing someone into the light. So I
Yeah.
think that's an incredible, that would be an incredible shift.
Yes. Yes. I agree.
Well, I don't know. This is Kit. I don't know if I'm unmuted or no.
No, you're unmuted. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I know that when I know of a death of someone, and there might be a part of me that, that loss of them in the physical world with me is a searing feeling. But at the same time, and sometimes I'm doing this on my own, I'm often doing this on my own because I know it wouldn't be appropriate to do it with that group or anything like that. There's another part of me that has a little small private rejoicing ceremony for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Kit. Any more comments, Simon, that would you like to read? I will send you the whole chat for your review if you like.
Yeah. No, I didn't think so.
All right. Well, there are many comments, and thank you all for your participation. So let's just close by visualizing, thanking Simon, and visualizing the planet surrounded by the network of triangles. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Really enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.